Hi, welcome to this week's Next Normal Show. Here with a special guest. I'm very happy to have Chris on the show. We already spent some time together all around the world, and now we're talking from Black Forest to Sydney, from trees to ocean, all over the world, and it's my pleasure to have you in the show, Chris.
I'm just upset that we can't be meeting face to face. We did Black Forest, we did Miami, and Sydney would be nice. So hopefully soon.
I'm vaccinated now, so I got the one shot only. So hopefully soon it will be possible to travel again, and that's actually that's something we didn't cover. But personally, I think that, and this is a very big thing for restaurants, is in the future business travel, because we are now so much used to be efficient in video conferences and putting meetings in. Future face-to-face meetings will have a much more social character. In my opinion, yesterday I had a meeting with Migros, with Andy in Zurich, and we didn't meet in the office, because we can do video conferences in the office. We went out, so we went into the place of action and experience it. For my opinion, in the future, meetings, yes, but much more focused on social interactions.
I for one hope to never be in a boardroom or a conference room ever again. I think you're right. Let's make sure we meet in restaurants from here on in. That should be our rallying cry for the world.
Yeah, and good restaurant concepts, and that's also a point. If people will adapt that and say, I can work, I can meet efficiently in the virtual meeting room, but I want to have talks. I want to meet more one-on-one. I want to meet maybe in teams. Restaurants also have a way of change. They've been closed all over the world for a certain times. They took some things from retail, like e-commerce or delivery, but for sure in the future there are more things to cover there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been interesting being in Australia, where COVID luckily has not been as widespread in other parts of the world. It almost feels like living in the future, where I get to see restaurants and people back to what it was like before the pandemic. And the good news is, I think people's social behavior comes back very quickly. And so, I think we're going to see people back in the restaurants using self-service, using all of the things that have maybe not been used throughout the pandemic. So it bodes well for the industry.
And so the topic that we picked together was, finally restaurants are catching up on retail, and was on a conceptual side, on a technology side. And for me, as a first step, maybe is to say, I see a lot of retailers going into restaurants. So a lot of grocery retail concepts, a lot of retail concepts are actually going in the direction to say, okay, let's offer also an integration of some kind of convenient food, some kind of additional hospitality features in their ecosystems.
It's definitely a big thing that we're seeing. The food hall concept is alive and well, where someone can go and have complete choice, but still get it as restaurant quality, fresh food. And we've seen it, in the US, we saw with Walmart beginning to replace traditional McDonald's as the only option with food courts or fresh sushi. And even seeing retailers getting into the ghost kitchen space, where they're now kind of building their own food and beverage brands building it in the retail, but actually then delivering that through, the aggregators like they were an actual restaurant. So it's the merging of kind of traditional food and beverage and retail. I think something that we're going to see more and more of.
And so when we talk about restaurants are catching up, is it a way where you say it's just restaurants just kind of take the spot and say, okay, I don't need to have my own location, or I have my own location, but I do kind of extra location in the retail space? Or will you see some new restaurants concepts which actually offer a different approach, and also approach by technology, in a sense? What can a restaurant do on technology side to bring that up to speed?
Yeah, I think it's amazing, kind of pre-COVID, just how immature the food and beverage industry was when it came to the digital experience. If you think about you as a consumer, you would go onto Amazon and get this very transparent, very real-time experience. And
no time.
Yeah, everything's there. Yet you would call up a restaurant to make a reservation, or go to a website that gives you no flexibility at all for a restaurant. And so I think the consumer expectations have kind of driven restaurants to really think about, how do I give that more retail type experience? And with that, changing the entire restaurant configuration. Whether it's, we've seen drive-through being the big winner during COVID, where brands like Chipotle are putting in drive-through. Brands you would never think would go into drive-through are investing heavily in these new store configurations that are more like the kind of retail click and collect type approach. So that's going to be a big change.
And for me, drive-through is an interesting topic, because if we cover that with drive-through, you're actually diluting your maximum delivery opportunity, because drive-through just takes so long for order fulfillment. And I also talked to some restaurant chains who said we don't want to offer drive-through, because we can be much quicker if we just offer click and collect. So if we offer that option, we will just hinder ourselves. We cannot make the process that quick, so we rather prepare as many of those, and this is maybe a different part a little bit to retail, is those peak times. You talk about some restaurants with peak times, so better prepare in advance and just get people to collect it, depending on your environment, collect and deliver, then have people drive in and create a big infrastructure mess.
And drive-through is hard, as you say, like the infrastructure needed. If you have an existing restaurant and you think, let's try drive-through, you're suddenly going into a construction project that's going to cost $500,000 to try something new. Whereas, we've seen with technology now, you can turn on click and collect like that, and have it so that you're almost creating like a virtual drive-through, to your point of, where you can say, arrive at this time, press this button, alert that you're arrived at the restaurant, food comes out to you, and you've saved yourself $500,000 in kind of drive-through configuration. And the other part is not only the construction cost, but labor in drive-through is huge. You're only able to serve as fast as the cars can come through. And so, to your point on peak times, it's not the most efficient model that's out there.
Yeah, and like you said, infrastructure investment is always, especially if you do, it's one thing to go to greenfield and say, I do a drive-through optimized location, which some of you see some nice pictures of some chains who did like test sites, which very interesting concept, also having dark kitchens with bring the stuff up from from below, the kitchen is below the earth, then you can have maybe a different time necessity per serving. But on the other hand, if you have an existing location, you have parking spaces. How can you even do it? Getting the right approvals on a state side, this takes ages on that end. And then again, if you come in and hope that or think that people will return, I also believe people then again need parking spaces. They don't want to have like 20 cars outside of the restaurant hooping and having all that chaos. That's probably also a question that has already been answered in retail. So I think in that sense, retail already has an answer to say, okay, let's separate. Maybe we have an efficiency operation that's click and collect. We have an experience one where you see things and can touch, and you have another one where you have kind of service functionalities. But retail is already more experienced in those concepts.
And look, the hard thing with drive-through, well, an interesting stat, however, I think different markets will be different. We were doing some research last week, and a partner of ours was saying 73% of Americans went through a drive-through at least twice in the last 12 months. That's a lot of people that kind of like that channel. I think the challenge is you might be a first-time customer in the car in front. I go there every single morning and order the same thing, and you and I will get exactly the same experience. So I think now there's kind of a lot of thought about how do you have express lanes for kind of high frequency customers? How do you then have slower lanes for those people who want to come and read the menu and take their time? So I think we'll start to see the kind of the personalization again that retail has been doing for a long time start to come into that kind of drive-through experience.
And that's maybe one of the fundamental parts, and that's what I think is interesting on an Oracle side, on a system side. When you talk about retail, I mean, most of the time it's a dead product. You can have a electronic shelf label. It's one SKU. Maybe you have a lot of SKUs, but it's one product. On the side of restaurants, we talk about fresh food. Even if it's convenient and pre-packed, and you don't need to have the highly paid chef, it's still a certain process that's behind preparation, and that's very much on a side to manage. You can have a great ordering system with great UI or a great app system, but then if your resource planning or system behind that is not as quick, and you don't have great modular options on pre-prepared things, you'll fail because you give a customer additional choice. You give him or everybody has the experience of retail. It's quick, it will be there in no time. But then you order online, you arrive, and the stuff's not ready, and you have no know-how why it's not ready. Or you have now the possibility to say, I want extra avocado, I want extra onions, I want this, and I want this sauce, and then it doesn't arrive that way. So that's a big challenge on data or data quality, making the right containers and the right contents behind it.
And consumers don't make it easy in terms of everyone orders a different way. The way that you order a coffee might be very different to how I order a coffee. You might say, I want a large black extra milk latte. I might say, I want a latte, extra large. And so it's the kind of the order comes in very different, kind of almost conversational fashion. And that's really hard to then turn into how do you pick an SKU to match that? So, yeah, I mean, we've had to do a lot of work with you get the technology to kind of allow the consumer, because I think every journey starts with how the consumer wants to order. You can tell them how to order, they'll go however they want, and then making sure that you can match that up to resource planning, supply chain, and everything else. And yeah, I think we see those customers who can do that very flexibly, kind of win out over those that are very rigid, very structured, and kind of can't change it on the fly, because the consumers will always want that extra avocado or the extra shot in their coffee.
And the question is, do you do it within the system and have it registered and planned, or do you do it, let's say, on a gray area, like maybe in the past, where a waitress would come to your table and then you say, I want to have this menu. Actually, I didn't have a photo because I was just looking into cards, so I didn't know how the salad would look. And I would say, maybe can I have an additional avocado or something? And then she would write it down, or maybe make a note on her NCR terminal to say extra avocado, but actually there was no pricing, there was no resource planning behind it. And once you go in a complete order system on your phone, where you usually don't have the opportunity to make comments. I mean, I don't see in many ways, in many areas, this part where you can say comments, I want this extra. No, you have extra items that if the restaurant allows extra items, they are highlighted there. You have a photo of the thing. And then when it arrives, first of all, you check against the photo, is it what I ordered? But then again, you have all the extras, which the restaurant has to handle on the logistics side.
And I think that, it used to be that you would have different complexity for different channels. So, if you have a waiter, you could get very sophisticated and complex. I want extra avocado on half my pizza, no avocado on the other half, so that you can share it with your partner. Whereas if you ordered through mobile channel, it would be one pizza's available, and maybe you'll get lucky and get some free form text to write it. I think the consumer now wants, regardless of what channel they use, whether it's a kiosk, whether it's mobile ordering, whether it's a human, they want that same level of personalization that they can get as they would have, if they were talking to a human. And again, that needs a lot of kind of processing and transactional capabilities in the back end. Otherwise, the order gets to the kitchen and they're like, which half of the pizza should I put the avocado on? So yeah, it's a pretty big challenge.
And I think in the past, this was handled more or less outside the system, or this was done in a more manual fashion outside of the system. But again, people were sitting at the table and they were close by. So if we talk about the future of restaurants, like you said, you have many channels. You have the guys who pick up, maybe they pick up and they even look at the stuff when they're at home, or the delivery services, and then they deliver something, and then you look in there, and they're the guys who wait and still come to the table and then get something, but put all these options in and expect that past service, which again is difficult, because in the future you will try to have one UI, one menu, not separate menus over channels in that sense. So it will be very difficult if you say, okay, we cut that option. How would the waiter even give you the opportunity when you're in the restaurant to do that? And that's probably a big data part, how to handle that in the system part, on a software side, how to change that. And
like you said, like in retail, I would never say the word it's easier in retail. However, if you have 5 extra large white t-shirts, you know once you've sold out of those, and you can immediately cut it off. Whereas if you know your stock, which many retailers,
if you know your stock,
I'm assuming a level of kind of complexity there, but I mean, if you have in your kitchen, 15 kilograms of beef, and that might go into a steak, into burgers, into all these different recipes, it's really hard for you to be able to convert that into kind of SKU level availability. So, back to that data processing, you need that ability to be looking at forecasted sales, actual sales, predicted sales, and try and use some of that data to better forecast what the sales will be, and then I think the key is sharing that with all of the channels, so that, to your point, if you order on Uber Eats, if it says it's available, it better be available, because otherwise you're going to have a very angry customer when it doesn't arrive.
Yeah, and that's data. So shit in, shit out. So if your data is shitty, you will, in the end, even if you have the best food and your restaurant was always great, if you don't make that transition, you will have unhappy customers by that.
And it just takes one. And now the challenge is, if you eat in a restaurant, it is the restaurant's chef who cooks the food, the restaurant's waiter who delivers the food. So you own the supply chain all of the way to the customer. I think now, where the restaurant might cook the food, but someone who has no idea of that restaurant, no connection other than they're the driver, is suddenly responsible for getting the quality product to the end user. But the challenge is, it's the restaurant that will lose a customer if the food arrives wrong or incorrect or not on time. So it's a real challenge for food and beverage to have better planning, transparency over how does the food get to the end consumer, regardless of how they order. And then, another thing, we see large brands, the Starbucks of the world, the Pizza Huts, they've done this for years. But an independent small restaurant to invest in that level of processing has always been hard. So, we're now seeing, though, the ability for smaller restaurants to take similar systems and apply it to their restaurants. So, it's a good democracy of the industry.
And especially when those smaller independent restaurants then said, okay, now we need to have an app for delivery, and they took, let's say, a startup mobile ordering company and said, okay, we do that. They have an API to the Oracle database, great. So let's take them, and then you have one channel, and then you have maybe a second channel where you say, okay, I don't want only to do delivery, but I want also do pickup, or I want to do pre-ordering for the restaurant in that sense. And then who can do that, and having that in your database. And this is something that we talked about in beginning of 2020, where from my simple thinking was just what the restaurant industry, in a sense, it very much is like in the internet age, where everybody was building their own web page. I mean, web pages in the end of the 80s, you had to have each web page had to be programmed yourself. You had to do all the stuff, was like horrible. And then once WordPress came in, you had a certain cutoff, and you just said there are some possibilities to do like in the marketplace. I put on top, but in the end, I have the layer that handles all the intelligence, all the data parts, everything behind. And that's very much the concept that I understood what role Oracle is looking in that end, which makes it more complex, the more APIs and the more channels you have. But that's something you've been working on already since some time.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think even 2 years ago, if a restaurant wanted online ordering, they would have to go and take their entire menu, which already exists in the point of sale, go to another system, manually enter every item, every
picture.
Picture every trade. But it's already in this system. And so, yeah, I mean, we've worked really hard with partners and our own solutions to just make it, if you want online ordering, you've already got a menu. You just maybe want to add, some things like, location, or your search engine optimization. But if you can't be up and running in say 2 hours, there's a problem. And we're seeing now restaurants, they don't wake up and say, okay, I'm going to implement today online ordering, pre-pickup, curbside, drive-through. It kind of happens in stages. And so now we see it as the ability just to turn on the features when they want it is a demand that, every restaurant has now. It's not just the big guys. So it's amazing how quick things have changed in just 2 years.
And you need to have the data quality in order to do that. I mean, let's say maybe the picture of the food you want to show your customer needs to be different than the picture of the food you had internally for your chef or something to look at, or if there's a picture available. So having right data quality and already think about all these channels might come. That's a huge task.
And I'm sure you've been onto restaurant websites where the online ordering shows a menu where every picture is spaghetti bolognese. And, I think that comes down to they've picked a system where maybe it's going to take them, a web developer to go and change every single picture. And so people want to be able to get that, online ordering experience up and running, super quick.
Yeah, and the other part, what I also find interesting is this merge. So maybe when we think about a food court or that we discussed before, which is not yet resolved in a sense, but there are technical solutions. I have to go to every single location. So if I go shopping in a retail environment, I take my stuff and then I go to the cashier and pay. But if I think about a food court setting where I want to pick from different restaurant parts and either take it home for home eating or just go to another place. And if I have my family, my kids want Italian, my wife Japanese, and I take something from Greece, different locations, to bring that together in one bundle. And that's also what delivery services still struggle with. So with doesn't work. If I take the German Lieferando platform, but also like Uber Eats in Switzerland, you still can only do one order per restaurant, not multiple vendor orders in the system. So this is also a very interesting topic, which is different. If I go to Amazon, I just buy my stuff and then whoop, gets delivered. Whereas in the restaurant, it's still a single-minded restaurant view, not a consumer view.
Yeah, and look, I think that will change. We're seeing now with virtual brands and ghost kitchens, a lot of like virtual food court kind of concepts. And some of them are owned by the delivery companies. They'll set up one kitchen that has 15 different brands. Might be the sushi, the Greek, the Italian, like you say, but it's all coming out of one kitchen. And so I think that's something that we'll see more of. I mean, to your point about the food court, and we still see experiences where you have to go and pay and transact at every single location. We've seen some of the technology now, like computer vision with cameras identifying the food, or the Amazon Go concept where you can walk out and automatically pay. That's a lot of technology to sell some sushi and a burger. So I think that's going to take some time to mature. But
it's
we'll see
also
that over time.
It's also something when you mention the payment, and that's on the cost side. I mean, every transaction costs money. I mean, if there's a, let's say, food court in New York, there in the beginning of Central Park, 59th Street or something, where there's this large food court. But in the end, if you have high frequencies, that's a lot of money you can save. If you always go, I go to the coffee store, I go to the juice store, and I collect my salad, and I need to pay at every part 3 transactions. And if you could aggregate that over a certain period of time, I mean, not nice for the payment collector, but those are things where you could really also get efficiencies out of the chain.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you just think about the labor that's involved with having 3 transactions instead of 1. But I think it's also, you know, the customer's going to want choice, and they're going to want to be able to decide when they pay. And I think the very idea of having to go to a physical counter to pay, we're going to see that disappear in the next few years. I mean, we've already seen, you know, I guess one of the poster children of COVID is the QR code. You know, we've seen the QR code come back. I think it was kind of dying there for a while, but using QR codes at tables or at a, you know, as a virtual kiosk when people kind of just consume all of their food and then pay. I think we're going to see a lot of that change in the kind of payment space, which again, retail's been doing a lot of that for a long time. So it's kind of great to see food and beverage finally catching up.
Yeah, and it's so we already over time.
It went quickly.
what I expected when we start talking, and it's a very interesting topic, and we can go on for ages. And actually, I really enjoy going around and testing out new environments. I mean, that's another great part. Testing out food and beverage environment. Retail environments are also nice, but food and beverage is so direct. You have such a direct hit when you taste food, when you are in the ordering process. Just a lot of fun on seeing those new concepts and testing that.
Just not good for your waistline. That's the only challenge.
Depends what you eat. Depends.
Well, that's true. That's true.
And maybe if there are any questions out there, I don't know how many people are watching. Actually, it's not showing that when I do dual channel streaming. But if there are any questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, use the discussion part or the comment part in the event. I will later repost it also. So let's see if we generate some interest and some inspiration with our talk. No, thanks a lot for your time, Chris. All the best to Australia. Have a great evening, and kiss the waves sooner or later, and say greetings from the Black Forest. We are having open beer gardens now. The summer is coming, so beer tastes good. That helps against any virus.
That is the main thing. That is the main thing. As long as the beer tastes good, and hopefully next time we meet, we'll be face to face in somewhere like Tahiti. So I look forward to it.
Great. Thanks a lot, Chris. All the best.
Thanks. All right. See ya.